Welcome everyone to another session of intermediate YouTube session, special session. Here today we'll be discussing unit 3 of international trade. All right, with regard to various types of agreements and regional trade agreements and the implications of having a World Trade Organization with us. So before we start, an important news or important piece of information for you here, that you can watch any Unacademy special session, whether it's a YouTube session or special session on Unacademy platform, for completely free. This is to give you an idea that what kind of technology we try to use and help students become more comfortable with online classes. So there will be a lot of features available in the Unacademy special session, and which will be available in the plus subscriptions and iconic subscription as well. That will be, you don't have to type your doubt anymore. You can raise your hand and you can ask the doubt through voice chat with the faculties. You can ask unlimited doubts during the ongoing classes, during the live session. There will be a lot of quizzes and polls that will test your knowledge. There will be a lot of doubt clearing sessions. Every fourth session will be a doubt clearing session as well. So unlimited doubts, you can ask doubt anytime. You can get high quality solutions both in English and Hindi. But for those batch, where for the students who are joining the Unacademy and Yeshas collaboration batch, it will be only English, and you will obtain important and accurate solutions for the questions, and assistance with your homework as well will be given. Now the plus subscription, if you take, you will get 10% discount, and you will get additional discount if you use Yashas live code. For 12 months it is 1688 for plus subscription. For 24 months it is 1125. Remember, the longer the duration, the lesser per month cost you have to bear. For 6 months 2625, and for 3 months 3750. And for iconic subscription, it has an added advantage, wherein there will be one-to-one interaction with the faculty. There will be frequent mock tests will be conducted. There will be a discourse channel where students will discuss their queries with the faculties and among themselves, and many more. So for 24 months it will cost you 2583. For 12 months it will cost you 3188 per month, and for 6 months 5000 per month. And you can get 10% off if you use this code. So please remember to use this particular code, that is Yashash Live, to get 10% off in any of the package that you are subscribing to. Now let's continue with trade negotiations. The name of this unit is trade negotiation. All right. You see, when we are living in a highly integrated globalized world, wherein one country cannot remain in isolation, cannot produce everything that the people in the country wants. There has to be some goods have to be imported, some have to be exported. There is a comparative advantage and disadvantages that will lead to flow of goods and services. But remember, in a globalized world, only exports and imports are not happening. The definition of globalization, if you see, it will lead to free flow of goods, services, knowledge, information, capital, technology, human resource across the border of the country. And today we are living in a highly globalized world, wherein the market has shrunk. Many of the commodities that we use in our domestic territory are either imported or produced by foreign firms in India. Obviously Indian firms are also producing, and we have Indian multinational as well. You see, Bharti Airtel, it is not only providing you services here in India, it is one of the biggest players in South Africa. So now when there is trade is happening between various countries, these countries have to come up with agreements. Just like when two individuals or three, or a group of individuals, they start a partnership firm or a joint venture, or if there is amalgamation between companies or strategic alliance that is happening for the mutual benefit of these businesses, You will have to come to an agreement. You will make a contract that yes, what will be the benefit that I will derive, what will be the benefit that you will derive, what will be the implication of cost on us. So when you take it to a higher level, one country is trading with another country. It's not only trading of goods and services, but flow of capital is also happening between these countries. So they have to come to an agreement which will be mutually benefiting both these countries, and there are different types of agreement that two countries can enter into. But remember, it is not only two countries that may enter into agreement, there could be multiple countries that can form into agreement. When a two country is there, it's known as a multilateral agreement. When there are more than two countries, when there are only two countries, we call it as bilateral agreement. When there are more than two countries, we call it as when we call it as a multilateral agreement. Now there are also something sometimes we call as a trading bloc. What is a trading bloc? A trading bloc, we can say, or regional bloc, it could be between more than two countries. For example, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, BRICS. It's a trading bloc. So they have come together to promote each other's mutual interests with regard to export, import, inflow of capital, technology, information, and so on. So that is considered as a one trading bloc. There can be agreement between two trading blocks as well. Alright. For example, there could be an agreement between BRICS and G8. Agreement between two blocks. There can be agreement between a country and a bloc. Alright. For example, India, APEC, or India will have an agreement with other blocks. Right. So there can be different varieties of agreement between one country and another country, between a country and a bloc, and between two different or multiple different blocks. So we are going to, these blocks are generally formed to negotiate, to go for trade negotiation. All right. Trade negotiation. Hello everyone. How are you? So hope a doubt as if demand is good for any good, then the firm is wanted to increase price, the law of demand violated, what we do in this case? Dear, this query you can ask me in the special session with which take care of this is the question related to foundation. I'll answer that when I'm taking foundation classes. This is an intermediate class, everyone, so you can ask me any doubt but pertaining to what I'm teaching here right now. But anyways, let me look at what is the doubt that he has asked me. So I have a doubt as if demand is good for any good, that a firm is wanted to increase the price, the law of demand violated, and what do we do in that case? No dear, the law of demand will only be violated in case of extreme cases, alright, exceptional cases. Otherwise law of demand will not be violated. So if I'm a supplier and if increase the price of the commodity, I will only increase the price when people are willing to pay a high price. If people are not willing to pay a high price and increase the price, then the demand will never increase, it will fall down. Anyways, let's go to it. Let's cover this topic here. So trade negotiation, you see, trade negotiation is a process through which different countries, now remember, if this handout is more than enough for you, it is highly factual in nature, so you just stick to this handout, and this handout I'll be sharing in the Unacademy intermediate group as well. So you can simply download this handout. This got only those points that you need to keep in mind, and that's more than enough. So in any competitive examination, it's not more what you study more, it's what you studied, what is the most important thing that you study many times over. Alright. So to which different countries discuss the possibility of trade with the goal of reaching a trade agreement. Trade negotiation can be quite complex. Why trade agreement could be complex? Because different countries are dealing, they have different economic laws, they have different currencies, people have different income level. One could be a developed country, another could be a developing country, one could be a mixed economy, another could be a capitalist economy. So due to a lot of complexities, because economic environment in two countries is not always the same, and for two countries to come to a common agreement, it's a Herculean task. But all the more we all know that it's better to come to an agreement than not having any agreement, because if you are not having agreement, trade agreement, then trade will be affected and mutual benefit will not be derived by different countries. So that's why it's complex, but we have countries do sit down on a common platform, for example WTO and other trading blocks, to negotiate on the trade. There is always a negotiation, just like a buyer and seller, they're negotiating. So that's why different two countries, they will sit down on a table and they will also discuss, okay, I don't agree to these terms. They will say, I will not agree to these terms. So rather than fighting it out, let's find a common ground. Right, quite complex and may involve more than two nations, in which case it is also commonly known as multilateral trade negotiations. So multilateral trade negotiation will lead to multilateral trade agreements. Nations count on international trade to access goods and services which cannot be produced domestically. Yes, you see 80% of the crude requirement we import from other countries. If health sector in India is booming, but don't you know that many of the sophisticated medical equipments like MRI machines and scanning, they are not invented by Indian companies. They are manufactured by GE, by Toshiba, by Siemens. So if we are not importing these machines, don't you think everybody who is suffering from disease which can be easily cured if we know what's going inside your body, they will die, or they will have to go to other countries where this technology is available. So can you understand how important is the trade? So next, regional trade agreements are treaties among two or more governments that agree to offer more favorable treatment of trade between themselves than they do to goods imported from other regions. For example, if Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, or BIMSTEC, Bay of Bengal Initiative, Multilateral Technical Economic Cooperation, or Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, or OECD countries, Organization Economic Cooperation and Development, these countries are entering into a trade, entering into a negotiation, and they are coming up with a multilateral negotiation. It means, what will it do? It will benefit the member countries. It means if Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, they come to an agreement that they will decrease the import duty on goods imported from each other country, they need not pass on this benefit to other countries who are not a part of the group. So it means it will mutually benefit only those members who are a part of the trading bloc. All right. Next, trade negotiation. Different types of trade negotiation. You will get a small question, 2-marker question. Mostly you will get from this particular unit, but as well you can get a 5-marker as well. Where we'll see it later on. Unilateral trade agreement. Now there are various definitions of unilateral trade agreement, but remember in this case, in a unilateral trade agreement, one country is very powerful compared to the other country, and the negotiation is largely one-sided, wherein one country says that yes, if you have to trade with me, then these are the terms and conditions if you have to follow. If you follow, well and fine. If you do not follow, I will go and sign this agreement with other countries. For example, if US is entering into an agreement with Bangladesh, or US is or UK is entering into an agreement with Sri Lanka, they will have an upper hand. So the trade negotiation will be largely one-sided in this case. So a unilateral trade agreement is commerce treaty that nation imposes without regard to others. It benefits that one country only. It is unilateral because other nations have no choice in matter. It is not open to negotiation. Basically, it's not a negotiation, it's an agreement you're calling it. A bilateral trade is the exchange of goods and services between two countries or two blocks, or a block and a country. As I've told you, a country with a block, they can join, two blocks can join, or two countries can join hand together. What it does, all these agreements is related to free flow of goods, services, information, human resource and factor input between the countries. So facilitates trade and investment by reducing or eliminating tariff. What is tariff? Import duty. When I say tariff, I largely mean import duty, because export is good for the country, so no country will impose any kind of tariff on export unless it leads to artificial scarcity that can be created within the domestic territory. So you'll see India will never impose any export tax, because export will help India earn foreign exchange reserve. It will generate more employment within the country, because it is in that when you are exporting, you're producing within the domestic territory of the country. All right. Import quotas, export restraints and other trade barriers. Now sometimes they ask you, what is the difference between a measure and a barrier? See, the difference between a measure is a barrier is that barrier is an extreme form of measure. If I say that from China, if I import, the government of India will impose 10% duty on every commodity that is imported from China. That is a measure taken When government imposes import duty of 10%, it means the price of Chinese goods in India will increase by 10%. So Indian goods will be able to compete with Chinese goods. Alright, so this is a measure to protect the domestic sector, to keep the import under check. But when government of India says that I am going to impose 70-80% of import duty on any commodity that is imported from China, then this measure becomes extreme. When it becomes extreme, it becomes a barrier to trade. Alright, that's the difference. Now it's not been clearly defined in your ICI book, but yes, this is the difference between a measure and a barrier. When the measure becomes very extreme, it becomes a barrier. Alright, so US, EU South Africa Free Trade Agreement, Association of Southeast Asian Free Trade Area, and this and that. So first, regional trade agreement we'll see. What is regional trade agreement? You see, it's a trading bloc first of all that gives preferential access to certain products from participating countries. It means if there is a preferential agreement, preferential, it means one country will give preference to the other countries who is a part of the agreement. So as a part of the preference given, then it means if 2 countries or 5, 6 or 10 countries are coming to a preferential agreement, it means they will decrease the import duty from goods from each other countries. Alright, this is done by reducing the tariff but not abolishing them completely. For example, global system of trade preferences among developing countries. Alright, then what is the trading bloc? It is a group of countries that have free trade agreement. Remember, free trade agreement doesn't mean there is no import duty. Free trade agreement, it means the trade is happening between countries and the import duty are very small, very less import duty is taking. It means the import duty will never become a barrier to the trade. So free trade agreement between them. So each of these countries, they will reduce the import duty when they are importing from each other who are part of a bloc themselves, and may apply common external tariff to other countries. Alright, so what they will do is that there will be free trade agreement between the countries, but a common external tariff. It means if these countries, they are dealing with some other country which is outside the bloc, then all these countries will charge common tariff from other countries. For example, hypothetically, let's take an example. If 10 countries come together, let's say India, China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, alright, these countries, they come together and say that if we import from each other countries, we will reduce the trade, tariff to the minimal. So there will be a free trade between us. But when we are charging tariff from other countries who are not a part of this group, then we will charge the same tariff from each other. That will make us even more stronger. So common tariff they will charge from other countries. For example, Arab League, European Free Trade Association, and so on. Then we have Free Trade Area. It is a group of countries that eliminate all tariff barriers on trade with each other and retains independence in determining trade. It means barriers they are reducing. Tariff is there, but barrier there. So what is the difference between a trading bloc and a free trade area? Here also there is no barrier, free trade is happening, but all the countries who have come to an agreement to decrease or reduce the tariff among themselves, they are independent to charge different tariff from different countries who are outside the bloc. Right, so you see here, and retains independence in determining their tariff with other non-members. Alright, North Atlantic Free Trade Area, it is one of the examples. Next, Custom Union. It is a group of countries. You have to read it once and once or twice to get the hang of it. Custom Union. It is a group of countries that eliminate all tariffs. अभी देखो, all tariffs on trade among themselves. Eliminate कर दिया, tariff है ही नहीं. Alright, they have eliminated, here they have eliminated barrier. Here they have eliminated all tariffs on trade among themselves but maintain common external tariff with others. It means there is no import duty between the member countries, but when they are dealing with other countries who are not part of the bloc, they are charging a common external tariff. In the first case, what it was, they are reducing the tariff, they are not eliminating it. Alright, so countries outside the union, thus technically violating MFN most favored nation status. I've told you it doesn't have any relevance right now. Why? Because I've told you in the WTO, if you are a member of WTO and you're giving most favored nation status to one country, you have to give the same status to all the other countries. So what is happening? The relevance of WTO is slowly coming down because the member countries of the WTO, they're coming outside the WTO and they're forming regional trade agreements. And what is the reason for the same? We'll see later on in this particular topic. Common market area. A common market deepens a custom union by providing for a free flow of factors of production, labor and capital in addition to the free flow of outputs. Now, it is even a very fluid market. So basically, you will find that not only manufactured goods are crossing the boundary of one country into another, but even the factor inputs, labor, machineries, capital, and everything that is the factor input materials, they all are going across the border. So input is purchased from one country, goes into another country, production happens, output is distributed in some other countries or maybe different. So this is happening. This is very common in European Union countries. Economic and monetary union. Now, what is economic monetary union? Here, some countries will come together and they will have a common currency. For example, Eurozone currency have a same currency. When in Germany, whether you take it Germany or you take it Italy, which is a part of, now every country which is a part of the European Union doesn't follow the same currency. So the countries which are part of the European Union, among those countries, among those 28 countries, around 17 or 18 countries, they follow the same currency. So they are also known as Eurozone countries. Alright. For example, Switzerland is a part of the European Union, but it is not a part of the Eurozone. It follows its own currency. Germany is a part of the European Union and is a part of Eurozone as well. It means Germany follows Euro. And for all these 18, 19 countries, you have one central bank that is known as European Central Bank. Alright. European Central Bank. You say La Casa de Papel, money heist, they went to what? Rob the European Central Bank. They were printing euros. Alright, that is the Reserve Bank of Eurozone countries, European Central Bank. Alright. In movies, everything is possible, dear. In reality, these things do not work out. Alright. So, European Union countries implement and adopt a single currency. Alright. Clear. Now, let's come to the concept of general trade agreement, general agreement on trade and tariffs. Now, before we go into it, let's give you a background, because sometimes when a question is asked, you just apply this common rule and you'll see how easy it becomes to answer the question. You just stick with me. Alright. So what is general agreement on trade and tariff? You see, when after the end of the Second World War, we figured out one thing, and that thing is that we cannot have a third world war, because most of the countries were nuclear capable, many of the countries. And if there is a third world war, Einstein has said that the fourth will be fought with spears and daggers, because there will be nothing left, humanity will be lost. Today, US and Russia is having so much of nuclear weapon that it can destroy the world 200 times over. It means there's the nuclear arsenal of US and Russia only. I'm not counting China, I'm not counting India, I'm not counting France there. Alright, only US and Russia, the amount of nuclear weapon they have, they can destroy the world 200 times over. They've got such amount of nuclear weapons. So they found out that one thing that can avoid war in future, a third world war in future, is economic dependence. Because US and China, they cannot enter into a war. They can have a tussle, a lot of tussle. US will check this missile, US will test this missile, China will test this missile. But there can never be a war until the time there is economic dependence of China over US or US over China. There is a mutual benefit they both gain. Chinese central bank is holding more than $2 trillion of US government bonds and US currency. If US is destroyed, that money is worthless. Tell me one thing, simple logic. If somebody has borrowed money from you, will you ever want to shoot him? If somebody has borrowed 10 lakh rupees or 10 crore rupees from you, and if I give you a gun, that is okay, there was disconnection. I think you can hear me now. It's clear. All right. So now we say that economic dependence, if one nation has over another, then war can be avoided. If US attacks China, Chinese economy is gone, US goes into recession because half of the iPhones are made in China. All right. US government is also has given a lot of debt to China, and Chinese government has also have purchased a lot of bonds from US government. There is a lot of technology transfer that has happened between US and China. Tesla is manufacturing in China. Dell is manufacturing laptop in China. Not only, Nike is producing 40 to 50% of their shoes, in China. So if China goes away, don't you think all these, Fortune 500 companies, so much of money they will lose, then collectively US will go into severe recession or depression maybe. So that's why. So economic interdependence will be created in this way. Now, general agreement on trade and tariff, what it tries to do is that when two countries are trading with each other and they don't have a general agreement of trade, then the chances of dispute between them will be very, very high. For example, a partnership firm can be registered and you have a deed which, explains the duties and functions of every partner. So don't you think if you have a clearly dictated partnership deed and you have registered a partnership, then every partner knows what is their roles and responsibilities? Don't you think the chances of dispute can be significantly reduced? In the same way, when two countries are trading with each other, they may have different. India is trading with China. Now India has a different economic system, China has a different economic system. India has different laws, China has different laws. So if we are exporting and importing between export and import is happening between India and China, the chances of dispute is very high, and if the dispute happens, the resolution becomes difficult. China can say to India, you are gaining more from me, so you have to follow what I dictate. India will say, why? You are also gaining from me. This is the policy I'll follow. Whether you have to trade or not, you go to hell. So when there is a dispute between different countries, don't you think the entire global trade will collapse? Globalization will never happen. And that's why the countries they meet up at Bretton Woods conference, it took place. At Bretton Woods conference, we decided to come up with this particular institution that is known as General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. The word is general, you have to see. General agreement, it means it's not a specific agreement. So a general agreement will be formed, and the countries who are becoming a member of the GATT will have to follow that agreement, general agreement. They can have their independent laws in their own country, but when they are trading with other countries, they have to follow this law. This law is general to all the countries who are member of GATT. So now tell me, if all the country under general agreement on trade and tariff in that institution follows the same rule when they are trading with each other, don't you think the chances of dispute will severely reduced? Yes or no? It will severely reduce. So that's the implication of GATT. But we found out that GATT is losing its relevance as the world is developing. Why? So that's why we had several agreements, and finally in the Marrakesh agreement that happened in Morocco in 94, we, after 8 successful rounds, Uruguay rounds, we came up with the concept of creating a World Trade Organization, and GATT was subsumed under WTO. Now GATT is not gone. In many of the books you will find that they've wrongly written GATT has been abolished. No, GATT has been subsumed under the WTO. Now GATT is a part of the WTO. Now what sometimes if they ask, very important thing is to know what is the difference between, what is the major difference between a GATT and a WTO. How the changeover has happened and what is the reason for this changeover, and what is this changeover. First of all, you see, it was a general agreement between the countries. We'll come to this point, but let's understand, when you understand these things, you'll be able to remember and understand these points that are written here. Countries are into general agreement to trade between each other, so the chances of dispute will come down, but it will come down, it will not be eliminated. If still there is a dispute between different countries who are a member of GATT, how do you resolve this dispute? Under GATT, there was no dispute resolution mechanism. It means when two countries who are a member of GATT and they are in dispute, how to resolve this dispute, this mechanism was not available. That was one problem. Secondly, when you see many a times countries amend their laws, why they amend their laws? Because when these laws were made, the situation, economic situations, socio-political situations were different. Now the economic situation is different. So the old laws which was made during the time when certain conditions prevailed, those conditions have changed now. So don't you think the laws have to be changed? Isn't it? If you follow the old laws to run a new economy, then there will always be a problem. There will always be a problem. So the amendment to the agreements on GATT was not happening frequently, and the world was changing at a breakneck speed. In the from 60s to 70s to 80s and 90s, the kind of growth the world has seen, the kind of development that has happened in the global economy has never been seen before. Even during the industrial revolution was never seen before, and GATT was not sufficiently catering to the needs of its members. All right, dispute resolution nahi hai. There was during the 40s and 50s, export and import of services did not play much role. It was the flow of capital, flow of goods only that was playing an important role. But as we move to the age of computers, you see service industries bloomed very fastly at a lightning speed, you can say. So now exchange of services became a source of income for many countries. Today, Infosys is making a software which is purchased by Citibank in US. Now this is export of services that is intangible. Software is something that is intangible. Now on the export and import of services, there was no agreement. There was no rule with regard to the export and import of services, and services played a very important role. For example, if you look at our country, India, 60% of our GDP we get from the service sector. 60, and the secondary and primary sector combined they give 40% of the GDP. Countries like Singapore, Malaysia, they generate more than 80% of their GDP from service sector, not from the manufacturing industries, right? So manufacturing do happen there as well, but I'm talking about 80-90%. So service have to be there, but there was no agreement on services. So that's a problem again. Then there was what is known as trade related investment measures and trade related intellectual property rights. Now trade related investment measures was not there as a part of the WTO, as a part of the GATT, I'm sorry, it's a part of the WTO. What is trade related investment measures? If one country is investing in another country, if a business belonging to one country is making an investment in your country, in another country, how much protection is provided to that investment? That is a trade related investment measures. What measures you are taking to give protection to my investment? There is also a concept of national treatment principle in the WTO which was not there in GATT. Under national treatment principle is that if you allow import of good into your country from my country, then you have to ensure that the domestically manufactured goods and the imported goods, they are given a same chance. You cannot dictate that imported goods can only be sold in Bangalore and in Chennai, in Calcutta, and rest of the cities only domestic goods can be sold. You are creating an unequal ground. You can take an import duty, but you have to maintain at the same level. And if suppose FDI is happening, when a foreign firm is investing in your country, for example, Pepsi is coming to India, setting up a plant and manufacturing Pepsi here, and Bindu Jeera Drink is also an Indian company which is manufacturing here, you will not make any law which will be detrimental to Pepsi. Alright, the government cannot say on Pepsi I will take 20% of GST, on Bindu Jeera Drink I'll take 9% of GST. It means you are not treating the goods made by a foreign company in your country on equal platform with the goods made by your company, which is a domestic company in India. So these kinds of agreement to protect the investment made by one country to another was not there. There was a problem. Then this kind of system is also there under World Bank. Will not go into that because they have not included it as a part. Is known as Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. MIG is a part of IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. What it does is that one country will have to provide a guarantee to another country that if US is investing into India, if a company in US is investing into India, then Indian government will have to provide a guarantee that Indian government will not do anything that will be detrimental to the investment made by a foreign firm into our country. For example, when Indian government said that on Vodafone we are going to impose retrospective tax, the UK government, because Vodafone belongs to UK, the UK government dragged India to Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency that what you are doing is against the principles of both WTO and the World Bank. Then the Indian government said we are not going to make retrospective changes. Anyways, so it was not there. Then there was trade related intellectual property rights. Today in WTO, if a member country of the WTO, if any patent is given to India, if suppose I come up with a technology and I get this patent, the pen patented in India, India is a member of WTO, it means this pen, the patent of this pen will have to be honored by every member of WTO. Nobody can violate it. I don't have to get this patented in every country of the world where I'm selling it. Alright, I can get it patented in US, I can get it patented in India or just in India, just like that. So if there is a violation of my copyright, trademark, patent rights, then one country can be dragged into another country. Right? This thing has happened between Brazil and USA. Some years back when Steve Jobs was alive, he found out that a company in Brazil is also selling a phone which is known as iPhone. The only difference is Apple was using I think Apple uses कौन सा use करता है? Capital I use करता है, small I, and that company was using a capital I, but it was a violation of trademark. Now what Steve Jobs, he was very aggressive man. He said he sent a legal notice to Brazil. He sent a notice to the US government that it's a violation of intellectual property right under the trade related intellectual property right, and WTO, Brazil is a member of WTO. You need to take action against Brazil. And he independently, he was also taking action. He sent a notice to Brazil. Brazilian government was like, what the hell has happened? It was an unknown company who started to sell mobile phones in Brazil. They said the Brazilian government was duty bound to set up investigation, and what they found in the investigation was mind boggling. It is going to be a bolt of lightning for Steve Jobs. What they found out, that way ahead in I think 2001 or 2002, this company started to sell cordless phones, calling it intelligent phones, and they named it iPhone, and this patent was registered to them. And all the documents was there. The trademark office has given that trademark to that company. So it means the name iPhone doesn't belong to Apple, it belongs to that country, to that company. It was a bolt of lightning for Steve Jobs. Now what happened? Brazilian government sent a counter notice to US government that you have to stop Apple from using the name iPhone because it's a violation of intellectual property right under TRIPS. And US government was duty bound to do that. In fact, production of iPhone stopped for a week or so. Now Steve Jobs, like, can you, as if somebody has taken away his baby. What the hell has happened? Now out of the court settlement will happen. Now what happened, the funny part, the courts in US, the law firms in US, they flew to Brazil to represent a Brazilian firm because they knew that Brazilian firm is going to win the court of law. And even if they get 10% of the compensation that the Brazilian firm is going to get, that will be equivalent to 100 years of revenue generation for these legal firms. But Steve Jobs said, let's go and do out of the court settlement. Now this company, I think it was $10 million company, it was compensated for $20 billion by Apple. And not only that, every iPhone sold in Brazil, a part of the revenue, part of the profit will have to be shared by that company. So can you imagine what has happened? That company, it means the owner of that company will die, but the members will be able to get the revenue from Apple till the time they all are alive. Company gives cutthroat competition to foreign companies in India. Does foreign companies suit Indian companies? No, no, dear. How national? Uh, yes. Okay, benefit. No, dear. Competition. If US firm comes and they are not able to compete with me, and we then then you are failing to compete. How government is responsible? It is you are inefficient. No. Anyways, so trade related intellectual property rights there, it means the patent right will be protected. So let's understand what is given here as a part of general agreement on trade and tariff. GATT was a legal agreement between many countries whose overall purpose was to promote international trade by reducing or eliminating trade barriers. Alright, barrier you have reduced, not the measure. It means there will be tariff, but the tariff will be not so high that it will create a barrier. GATT was signed in 1947 and in 1992 WTO replaced GATT. It means GATT was not abolished, it was subsumed under WTO. 8 rounds of multilateral negotiation known as trade rounds were held under GATT, which resulted in substantial international trade liberalization. Because this agreement was with regard to liberalizing trade. Because if a country is controlling its trade very strongly, then neither the foreign firm will be benefiting from you nor your country will benefit. So liberalization is the first work that you have to do in order to become a part of the global economy. That's what Manmohan Singh did in 1991. Right? In 1991, what he did? He said that we have to liberalize the economy. Unless you liberalize the economy, the foreign firm will not come to produce here. The capital will not flow to India. And we will remain isolated in the global world, wherein all the countries are becoming a part of the global market. India will be isolated from it. We don't want to do that. Now, 8 round of Uruguay round, Uruguay is a country, all right, was the last and the most consequential of all rounds that culminated in the birth of WTO and a new set of agreements. It means now GATT was subsumed under the WTO. Next, why GATT lost its relevance, that is important. Now remember, if they ask you what is the what are the main things which are different from GATT and WTO, for this question also this answer will be there. Or they will ask you, explain what are the characteristics or what are the most important characteristic of WTO or important agreements under WTO. For that also this question, this point will be correct. Now you see, GATT was obsolete to fast evolving contemporary means present complex world trade scenario characterized by emerging globalization. When GATT came, the globalization was not happening at very fast rate. But after GATT, you see, in the next 2 decades, 3 decades, the pace of globalization have significantly increased. International investment had expanded substantially. Yes, FDI and FII was happening like wildfire across different parts of the globe. Intellectual property rights and trade in services were not covered by GATT, alright, which was included again in the WTO. Ambiguities in the multilateral trade system could be heavily exploited. It means, you see, you are not quickly changing or amending the agreements of GATT with the changing world. So there will be always ambiguities. It means vagueness in the agreement, and due to this vagueness, it can be used by one country to gain undue advantage over other country. That will be going against the concept of global trade. Efforts at liberalizing agriculture trade was not successful. Yes, you see, the WTO, the GATT wants to liberalize agriculture. They tried a lot to liberalize agriculture. Now, liberalization of agriculture will be benefiting more developed countries than developing countries. You see, in India, we don't allow FDI. Why? To give protection to the farmers. Because if we allow FDI in the agricultural sector, all the big foreign firms who are in the agro sector will come to India. They will start purchasing land and they will control the food supply in our country. So it will hurt the farmers real bad. The farmers will become an employee in a company rather than independently owning the land. They will use genetic modification to increase productivity, affecting the natural or generic variety of food. The food that you consume, you don't know what is going to happen to you in the next 10-20 years, because these are genetically modified. So that's why government did not allow, but it is in the interest of the developed countries that liberalization of agriculture happens, so that a market access can happen to the developed world. So they have already controlled the market for capital goods, the market for money, the market for investments. Now the market for services. Now they want to also control the market for agriculture. The moment you do that, you will end up controlling the global food supply. So that's why even today we raised this issue during the Doha development round in Qatar that happened, and the dispute under WTO started since that time. And even today, from 2002 2005 till today, we have not resolved the dispute on agriculture, because India and China is on one same side in this case. US wants, and other developed countries wants, India to open up its agricultural sector, liberalize agricultural sector, so that foreign firms can take benefit of the Indian agricultural sector. Indian government says no, will not do it, because the people who are practicing agriculture in India are the vulnerable group. They are the poor people. If we open up this sector, then there will be a problem. Right? Then there were inadequacies in institutional structure and dispute settlement mechanism. It means there was no dispute. Today, if one country is fighting with another country, there is a dispute, then all the countries will sit down together. There will be a discussion that will happen, and there will be a vote will be taken, and then the country will have to accept the resolution of the World Trade Organization. It is not a treaty, then therefore GATT terms were not binding only insofar they are not incoherent with the nation's domestic rule. Now what do you mean here? It is not a treaty. If it's not a treaty, it is not legally binding. Meaning what happened, if there is a general agreement, let's say India is a member of GATT, and there is a general agreement in the GATT happens. Now India will have to live up to that agreement, but only insofar that that agreement do not violate Indian law. So if any agreement that violates Indian law, then India is free not to follow that agreement, that particular provision in that agreement. Now it was misused by many countries. What it happened is that if any country found out that this particular agreement is going to create disadvantage for me, back home what they did, they amended the law. And when they, after amendment of the law, they said that okay, this agreement is against my own country's law, so we will not follow that law. So don't you think if every country does the same, if any agreement it goes against their law, and even if it is in favor of their law, but back home they change the law, and then they say that this agreement under GATT is against my own country's law, I will not follow, then don't you think entire agreement under this institution will collapse? Right or wrong? Right? If I join a company and I say that I will follow every rule of the company only till the time it doesn't violate my own rule at home, and so a company says okay, these are the rules, okay, I'll agree. Then one of the rules says that you have to come to office at 10 o'clock and leave office by 6 o'clock, and then I say that no, my wife has changed the law. My wife says that you can have to come home by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if I don't follow this law, you cannot throw me out of the job. So now I'll do from 10 to 3 job. So don't you think everybody will misuse it? Yes. Alright. Next. So Uruguay Round. Alright. It is not Uruguay, it is Uruguay. So Uruguay is a country and a very funny capital. You will find Uruguay capital Montevideo, you call it. Anyways. So Uruguay country. 8 rounds of multilateral trade negotiations happened in Uruguay, and 123 countries participated, which were the contracting parties. India was a member of the contracting party, both in GATT and both in WTO and also in WTO. The negotiation and process ended with signing of final act, which is known as Marrakesh Agreement. So finally in 1994 in Marrakesh, Morocco, country acceded to the creation of WTO, and from 1995 it led to the inception of the World Trade Organization. Now main achievements, what it included here. So remember, ab yahan pe dekho, how is it? They can ask you what is the main achievements of the Uruguay Round. So whatever is the difference between GATT and WTO, you can write everything that. All right, let's see how easy it is. So you have to apply strategy everywhere. So tariff cut, okay, chalo ye naya hai. Conclusion on agreement on agriculture, brought agriculture trade for first time under GATT. General agreement and trade in services, in GATT there was no services, so included. Agreement on trade related intellectual property right was not included in GATT, now included. Agreement on trade related investment measure was not in GATT, now included. So don't you think if you know the difference between GATT and WTO, you can also mark it as the achievement of the Uruguay round? Because Uruguay round is what? It tries to bring out take away the inconsistency or negativities on the GATT and transform it into WTO. Creation of unified and predictable dispute settlement mechanism. It was not there in GATT, now it's there in WTO. So difference again you can write. Confirmation of trade policy review body. Now this is important. Why? One of the fundamental reasons why GATT lost its relevance, because frequent amendment was not happening. The world was changing fast, but the rules or agreement of trade was not changing. So now within WTO, there is trade policy review body which follows trade policy review mechanism, wherein they will constantly keep an eye on how there is a evolution in global trade is happening, how something new or innovative way of doing business is adopted by different countries of the world. And then if they find that these agreements under the WTO have to be changed, have to be amended, then that will be amended. All right. So this trade policy review body, they always constantly review the trade. All right, sorry, suddenly my laptop shut down because I had not connected the battery connector to my laptop. All right, so here. All right, so that is trade policy review body. The establishment of WTO, which administers 15 multilateral and 4 plurilateral agreements. Even if you ignore this point, that doesn't matter. Now come to WTO. You see the fun part now. WTO, World Trade Organization, is the only global body, international organization dealing with rules of trade between countries. Now there could be trading block between different countries, but when you're talking about the global organization, that is only WTO. WTO's primary purpose is to promote open trade for the benefit of all. Now this is just an eyewash or hogwash, because up till now WTO has benefited mostly more the developed countries rather than the developing countries. You see, understand the concept here. If every country was very happy being a member of WTO and trading between the countries, member countries of the WTO, do you think there was ever a need for creating blocks like APEC, like BIMSTEC, like G20, like G8? Do you think if every country is happy, then why will they come outside the WTO and create a new team of countries? Right? They will never do it. All right. The reason why these other blocks are coming up, because then we say, sir, then developed countries ka bhi block hai. They have also block. Yes, because the developing countries are coming outside the WTO to create a block for the mutual benefit of the for their mutual benefit, because they have not been benefited by WTO. To counter them, developed countries will have to also create another group of developed countries. All right. Otherwise, they lose all their power. If all the developing countries come out of WTO and they will create their own grouping, and only the developed countries are trading in the WTO, they are honoring the WTO, then don't you think very soon underdeveloped, least developed and developing countries will become more powerful than the developed countries? They'll be losing it. To create a balance, they are doing this as well. So WTO is a place where member governments try to sort out the trade problems they face with each other. WTO decisions are made by the membership as a whole, either by ministers who usually meet at least once every 2 years, or by their ambassadors or delegates who meet regularly in Geneva. Headquarters of WTO is in Geneva, Switzerland. So it will either be the finance minister who will attend the meeting, and if the finance minister is not available, the ambassadors will be led by the Reserve Bank governor, who will be delegating on the ministerial conference conducted by the WTO every couple of years. Alright. Now this is the structure of WTO. If you come to this structure, you see this is first is the ministerial conference, which is the top-notch body. Then there is a general council, and one side you have dispute resolution mechanism, other side you have trade review policy body. So this dispute settlement body will take care of dispute of which can be in trade of goods, trade in services, or in case of violation of intellectual property right. And trade policy review body, what they will do, they will study trade and find out what development in the trade is happening in the world, so that changes in the agreement, in the WTO agreement, can take place. Balance of payment restriction. Balance of payment is what? When you export and import, you export, you earn foreign exchange, you import, you have to pay from the foreign exchange reserve. So at the end of the day, you can have either a favorable balance of payment or unfavorable balance of payment. If exports are more than import, the balance of payment will be favorable. If imports are more than export, it means you have a trade deficit. Just like simple national income you studied, no, that exports more than imports, trade surplus. Alright, it means the GDP value will increase. Imports more than export, then leakages will happen and the value of GDP will reduce. The same thing you can understand from the perspective of balance of payment. When you are exporting, you are earning foreign currency, it will increase the foreign exchange reserve, very beneficial for the country. And when you are importing, then what will happen? When you import, you have to pay that dollars that you earn through export. It means that will diminish the reserve, deplete the reserve. So at the end of the day, either you will have a surplus balance of payment or deficit balance of payment. So they will study that which country is having a trade deficit and trade surplus with each other, so that they can figure out that how the global trade is changing. And on budget and finance and administration, it means you have to budget for the expenses of the WTO ministerial conference, how every country have to contribute to the WTO so that the functioning of the WTO can happen. There are a lot of employees who are working in the WTO, they have to pay a lot of money, and so on and so forth. So you see here is given here, the structure has been defined here. WTO's top level decision making body is ministerial conference. It meets at least once every 2 years. Next level is the general council, which meets several times in a year in Geneva. General council also meets on trade policy review body, it's not very important, and settlement body. Goods council and services and intellectual property rights report to the general council. These councils are responsible for overseeing implementation of WTO agreements in their respective areas of specialization. WTO accounting for 95% of the global trade and currently has 164 members. So these are hard facts. If you don't forget it, doesn't matter. Just remember, what you need to know is that the difference between GATT and WTO, what were the problems associated with GATT, and how the WTO, inception of WTO, tried to do away with all these deficiencies. And that will answer different types of questions that they ask. They can ask you, explain the Uruguay Round. It means you have to explain that what happened, what change happened between GATT and WTO. They can ask you why GATT became obsolete in the global trade scenario. Again, you have to write the difference between GATT and WTO. Alright, clear? So the remaining things, that is with regard to guiding principles of trade, we'll discuss later on in other session. It could be a YouTube session or it could be a special session. You will be intimated with regard to that. Please ensure to follow the faculties, whoever is teaching you any particular subject on Unacademy platform, so that if any session for that faculty comes up, you can listen to that session, you can look at the session, you can log in. And because the thing is, many times what happens for others batches also, some special sessions are going on, so it will act as a revision for you as well when you're free and attending these